The Gospel is written in the 10th chapter of St. Luke, beginning at the 38th verse. Now as Jesus and the disciples went on their way, he entered into a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is a need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. I think it was just after I graduated from high school that I became enamored with the whole world of advertising. There was a very popular writer by the name of Vance Packard who wrote a number of books, and the first one he wrote was The Hidden Persuaders. He talked about how marketing and the advertisers and the clients, the business, the corporations got together and tried to figure how to make you and I buy the products or involve themselves in whatever product they had to make our lives more exciting, better. I'm one of those that when we talk about the Super Bowl, I am just as anxious to watch the ads for that show as I am to watch the ball game. There is a cadre of us who really likes to do that. And it is so popular that on the Saturday before the Super Bowl and usually the Monday after the Super Bowl, a great deal of the conversation centers around the advertisements. Generally, the best ads are done by brewing companies. And I guess that is easily explained because they probably have the most money to spend. But one of the things that I like to look at the advertisement is because I like to think about how we might market the church. And we really do market the church. We try to get people involved in our program and to like what happens here, what they hear here, and how they are loved here. As a matter of fact, one of the congregation members gave me this thing that says, "Join me in happy hour." And I think that every person that comes in when they visit makes reference to this and say, "Boy, I really like that." And I know it usually is used in connection with the bars, but this is exactly what the message of the church should be. It's a happy hour that we come together and we worship and we greet each other in the name of Christ's love. Certainly, it should be a happy hour. In the 1970s, I think the best ad that I ever heard, probably, and should be probably the banner statement of the church, again came from a brewing company. It said, its tagline was, "You only go around once in life. So grab all the gusto you can." How many of you remember that? You only go around once in life. So grab all the gusto you can. If there is a watchword for the church, think about that in new terms, because it is an exciting thing to think about. The watchword now in the advertising world rests on an acronym. It is FOMO, FOMO. And the advertisers are very much aware of this. It stands for the fear of missing out. the fear of missing out. And the whole concept is, if you're advertising to people, talk about things that might excite them, but make sure that they understand that they might be missing out on a lot of things. There are the people who have a fuller life, are taking more exciting adventures, more exciting vacations. There are others that are invited to better parties. And maybe you ought to just get up and think about things for a while and think about all the things you're missing out on, and our product or our service, whatever it is, can help you fill in those holes of all things you're missing out on. So, we concentrate on that, and we involve ourselves in a lot of things. The origin of this FOMO really was created by a Harvard graduate in the early part of the last decade. It was Patrick McGinnis, and he was studying human behavior. And he and his friends were all from rich families, one that had a lot of opportunities, one the ability to probably partake of anything that they were missing out on. And he began to understand that all his friends were cramming their schedules solid because they'd gone through things like 9/11, the stock market collapse, the debacle of the tech stocks back in 2008, and they were thinking about their mortality, and that things could go wrong, really wrong in this world, and there would be a lot of things that they hadn't participated in. So get out and grab the gusto. He said they filled their schedules, and yet they seemed unfulfilled, that there was something missing. We try to do this now, especially with social media. It is easy for us now, if we go on a vacation, to go to some exotic place, take a selfie, put it on your phone, and whisk it to all your friends and show them how much I'm enjoying life and how much exciting life is for me. And certainly you must be envious of all the things that I'm partaking of. What are you missing out on? What's missing in your life? I'm wondering if this wasn't addressed in the Martha and Mary encounter that we read about in the gospel. You're all familiar with that. Jesus comes to the house. Martha has invited him to be with his sister and brother Lazarus. And she's going about all the preparations. And she spent herself. Probably by the end of the day, Jesus comes. And Mary is crouched down, and she's excited about talking to him personally. And Martha becomes a little peeved because of her non-involvement in the things that she's involved in. And finally comes to the point where he said, Jesus, tell Mary to get her butt up and help me. Isn't this a crime that she's just sitting there? Now, many times when I've heard this text addressed, they beat up on Martha. And I want to tell you right now that I'm not going to beat up on Martha. Martha is the one that gets things done. I'll tell you, if we didn't have at least 10 or 15 Marthas in a congregation, nothing would ever get done. They are the ones that take care and are involved in practically every activity, and I'm not talking only about women, I'm talking about men, Marthas too, who just see it a part of their responsibility to take care of all activities that they are supposed to be involved in. So I am thankful to God every day for every Martha that we have. But the point Jesus was making was not condemning Martha at all. She was just saying, just make sure your priorities are straight. And you're happy doing what you do, and you do it well. But don't get on to Mary because she wants some personal involvement in me, because she thinks it's important to deal with me personally. more than to take care of the activities. There's some points that we want to take away from the Martha and Mary story. Recently, there was a research project done by another student, a survey of many thousand people, and what the question was asked is, what do you involve your focus on the most during the week? What is it that kind of enthralls you? Makes you worry sometimes. Makes you wonder if you're really getting the most out of life. And first of all, how satisfied with life are you? Over 40% of the people said, I'm unhappy with life. There's things that are missing. I'm missing out on something. So then he made a list of those things that people talked about that were most important. And it really is peculiar, but very interesting as to what the responses were. One of the most talked about was crime in the neighborhood. I guess that's important. And I guess if your community is crime-ridden, you certainly want to take care of that. But then the next one was my pet's health. That was number 2. Takes the most of my time thinking about keeping care of my pet. Third one was, how appropriately am I dressed? I spend a lot of time making sure I'm dressed appropriate for the occasion or for the community or for the kind of people that I dwell with. Fourth was meeting goals. Fifth was dealing with a problem with a family member or a friend. Sixth is whether I have the right partner. Now understand, not wondering if I am the right partner, whether I have the right partner. Seventh, good parents, wondering if we're good parents. Eighth, if I'm attractive. And he said one thing that was common to almost everybody was the concern about growing older. Nothing about integrity, nothing about your spiritual growth, nothing about your relationship with God, nothing about what am I contributing to other people in becoming a more productive part of this world. Isn't that interesting? We might be missing out, but maybe like Jesus said to Martha, maybe you're missing out on the really, really critical things. Maybe you ought to reorganize your thoughts. There are a couple of lessons that we ought to get from this encounter with Mary and Martha. And that is, don't get so involved in the activities of life that you miss out on the really, really important things. It is so often we do this. There is another byword that we have created by our social critics, and that is sunrise fatigue. And sunrise fatigue says that there are so many of us that get involved in the routine daily activities and spend so much time that by the end of the evening we are too tired, too worn out, too frazzled to relate to those people who we've given eternal promises to. And maybe it is time to hold back on some of the things that just make us plain flat worn out so that we can't relate to the people that are so important to us. Second thing is, don't get so involved in life that you don't see the presence of God. We don't have a God sighting. One of the things that we did in Bible school last week, and we do every year, we have a little band that we wear, and that band is to ask the children during the week to look at what's happening in the world and seeing where God might be active. And it is amazing what perception they do have. And they're coming back every night and having some vision of something that happened that day in which they saw God at work. And this gives reason to celebrate and reason to be thankful. I wonder how much of the time our lives are so crowded that we don't see any spiritual things happening at all. Don't get so involved that we miss out on the possibility of something profound happening. A profound opportunity for us to relate to others or make life better in general. There's an interesting thing that I read last week, and that was about a doctor. His name was Don Cooper, lived in the early 50s. And he was an emergency room doctor. And one of the things that happened during one of the times when he was called upon to administer to somebody, he injected some tranquilizer that stopped the heart. The person passed away on the table. And he stood there and was so angry at what had happened that he pounded the patient, pounded him right on the chest, time and time again, because he was so mad. Oddly enough, the person came back to life. But Don was so concerned about what he had done, so embarrassed to talk about this incident, that he didn't even recognize that he had discovered one thing that we use today of people to revive them when they have totally expired. It was 10 years before the idea of cardio resuscitation was developed. And Don Cooper passed it by because he just was so involved in the trivial, he didn't see a dynamic thing happening. What are you missing out on today? What's passing you by? Are you worried about somebody enjoying life just too much, so much more than you, that you can't recognize the important things in your own life, the things that give them depth and dimension, that give meaning and give purpose? So crowded sometimes, we even leave God out. And then you really are missing out. Amen. Sermon hymn, God Whose Almighty Word, 673. Please stand as you are able, 673.